My name's Rychele. I'm originally from Winnipeg, Manitoba. I spent some time living in Edmonton a few years back, and I came back to the city just last year. I first came in contact with crystal meth. I was a little bit older. I think it was 2012, so I was about 27. But I had been actively using other substances my entire life since I was about 13. My life was hectic. Both my parents struggled with addiction. So that type of thing was very much normalized for me at a very young age. My dad was in and out of jail, so that lifestyle had a pretty big impact on, my childhood and the things I saw and the things I experienced. In 2012, after my kids had been apprehended, in an effort to get clean, I moved back to Winnipeg. And unfortunately, the exact opposite happened. Things just got considerably worse. Everybody that I used to use with back home was no longer using the other drugs that we were using, and everybody was doing meth because it was cheaper and it lasted longer. So inevitably, I made the switch. I was an everyday user for 6 years. The last year, so I was actively involved in crime throughout those 6 years, and the last year things just blew up to a whole different level of crime. Subconsciously, I wanted to stop. I wanted to stop using. I wanted to stop doing what I was doing. But the only way that I knew how, and the only way that I'd gotten clean before, is by going to jail. So I just continued to do the things that I was doing until I got caught. And, like I said, it's just like a means to an end for me. It was hopelessness. It was just waiting for that moment to come. I developed a pretty big ego. I was treating the people who cared about me the most around me like crap, and catering to the people who didn't deserve a damn thing, and my life was just a complete disaster. It had become my normal to be surrounded by people but still feel completely alone, and I was super unhappy, but you never would have been able to tell. So with my final arrest, I knew when I got arrested that I wasn't getting out, and I was going to jail for a long time this time. But like I said, it's kind of what I'd been hoping for, right? The provincial system doesn't really give you a lot of programming or a lot of help. So having gotten a federal sentence, I was able to access a lot of programs, and I was really excited about that, And not only that, but I knew that I'd be coming back to Edmonton, and that's where my daughters were, right? And so that's my motivation to stay clean. I have a reason now. Haven't seen them, like I said, in over 8 years. But I'm hopeful that if I continue to do what I'm doing, they'll reach out eventually, right? I just gotta keep putting in the effort and keep showing them that things are different. In 2011, I had primary care of them, and I was using at the time, again, every day, not crystal meth, but still using every day. And eventually they got apprehended. They were in care for 6 months. Their dad ended up having a bunch of conditions that he had to comply with child services also, because he was also an addict, and he ended up getting sober. And in May of 2012, he got custody of them again, and they've been with him ever since. Honestly, so grateful. Him and I may have had our differences, but I've never been able to say a negative thing about him. He was there for our kids when I couldn't be, and he's been a great dad. I think the last time I tried to get clean, I was doing it for the wrong reasons. It wasn't so much about my kids. When I got a 1-year sentence, and when I got out, part of my conditions was to attend a treatment program, so I did. But I inevitably picked the only 30-day program in the city. It was the shortest one, least amount of work. And that should have been my sign right there that it wasn't gonna work, right? I wasn't doing it for the right reasons. It was short-lived. Never really been the religious type, but I figured, like I said, it was the shortest program, so I was gonna do it, right? It was a good program. I bought into the whole Christianity thing for a while, and it kept me clean for a little bit. But then I was also still in a very toxic relationship that my partner was still using, and so one thing led to another. And that codependency and the toxicity of that, I felt like my world was going to end if she wasn't at home with me. So she would go out to use, and then I ended up following eventually. I didn't go to treatment here, but like I said, when I was in the pen, they have an amazing set of programs there. They have like your mainstream program, and then they have like the Aboriginal stream, which is what I took. You know, it focuses a lot on culture and ceremony, and it's like CBT based as well. So I learned so much about myself, a lot about the culture, and it's like been my driving force. What kept me clean when I finally got back out into the community too. So I think part of the reason why I stayed stuck in my active addiction for so long was because I was so far away from my daughters. You know, every time I tried to leave Winnipeg to come back here, it never worked out, you know. I always had good intentions. Like my plan was never to be gone for as long as I was, you know. It was always had good intentions to get sober and to come back, but as you well know, with meth, I mean, it just consumes your world, and like, where did those 5 years go, you know? Getting the sentence that I got, being back out in Alberta, knowing that I was going to be released to Edmonton, it was an opportunity for me to try and make things right with my daughters again. That's what was different for me this time. When I first got out, I started going to another fellowship. And to be perfectly honest, I was going to meetings once a week because I had to, not because I wanted to. There was still part of me that like wasn't completely sold on like how I was going to be able to stay sober and like be happy and have fun without getting high. I was introduced to CMA by a friend of mine. I started going to CMA Pride when it first opened up last year. And I just automatically felt so welcomed. It helped that it was like a younger age group of people too, you know, more relatable. I feel like the experience with crystal meth is so different than alcohol or other drugs, that it really helped me a lot to be able to sit in a room full of people who like really understood what it was like. You know, I just kept going back, and slowly but surely I became like sold on the program. I was pretty reluctant to actually start working my steps, but you know, I eventually got a sponsor and started doing my step work. And even though I already had a pretty solid recovery and I was pretty confident in, you know, in what I was doing with ceremony and everything like that to keep me sober, when I started to do my steps, it just brought me to like a whole other level of like self-awareness and you know, ownership, accountability, and it's definitely been life-changing. And I've been actively involved in service. I was the GSR of Pride for a while, and you know, I've the area secretary now, and you know, just being able to give back to the fellowship is awesome. And you know, I've got a couple people that I sponsor as well, you know, and just being able to like contribute to someone else's recovery is super rewarding, you know, to see those little light bulbs go off that I once had go off, or it's pretty awesome. Well, pre-pandemic, I was participating in a lot of cultural events and ceremony. It's kind of been put on hold. I know things are kind of like starting to get back into the swing of things, so I'm planning on attending a sweat later on this month, and hopefully round dances will come back this winter. I try to be active. I don't really have a whole lot of spare time since I work full time, but I like to bead, I like to sew. At first it was just something to pass the time. And then, so I've been beading for 7 years now. I just picked up sewing when I was incarcerated this last time. I took the Aboriginal stream of programming while I was there, and I lived in the traditional house. It's called Pathways. We work really closely with the elders, and you know, you learn about the culture, about the ceremony, and one of the things that I learned to do was to sew. I started with ribbon skirts and progressed to star blankets, and it's super relaxing. I really enjoy doing it.